Hi, this is Bob Pickle from Pickle Publishing. We have an exclusive story for you, an investigative report about the theft in August last year. $834,197 was stolen from the Minnesota Association of Townships Insurance and Bond Trust, called MATIT for short. The public has been misled about that theft and its aftermath, but at present we do not know why. Before we get started, let me first point out the article in the spring 2023 issue of Minnesota Township Insider by Jeff Krueger, the executive director of the Minnesota Association of Townships, or MAT for short. Note the part about his disagreements with the MAT board minority. In particular, note these two words, truth and transparency. If we take what Jeff says here at face value, then he will greatly appreciate our investigative report because he highly values truth and transparency. Now let's quickly identify a way in which the public was misled about the $834,197 theft. Here's MATIT's February 7, 2023 letter acknowledging the theft. Note this paragraph from that letter. It leads the reader to believe that cyber advisors discovered that the thieves used a bogus domain name to perpetrate the theft, and that MAT and MATIT did not know about the bogus domain name until January 2023. But we now know that this is false. Here's an email that MATIT Director Heather Tidmore received from MATIT's reinsurance broker Alliant on August 23, 2022. This is a full week before the MATIT Board of Trustees was informed about the theft in a closed meeting on August 30. The MATIT board did not vote to hire cyber advisors until September 14. Now note what this August 23 email from Alliant to Heather says. I've requested a takedown of the typo squatted domain, ALILANT.com. Thus, MATIT knew about the bogus domain name before cyber advisors was ever hired, and long before January 2023. Here's a page from the Wright County Sheriff's report on their investigation. The Sheriff's report corroborates the August 23 Alliant email. On September 12th, 2 days before the MATIT board voted to hire cyber advisors, the Sheriff's office was actively investigating the bogus domain name. So while the public was led to believe that MATIT didn't know about the bogus domain name until January 2023, in reality, MATIT already knew by August 23, 2022, before cyber advisors was ever hired. Now there is a hypothetical possibility that whoever wrote the MATIT letter didn't intend to mislead anyone and that they just were misinformed, or that they lack experience writing letters that accurately convey the facts, or maybe there are other possibilities. We did reach out to MAT and MATIT on July 5 via MATIT's external attorney, asking for comments on this question by noon on July 11, and received no reply. The next discrepancy is, in comparison, far more serious. MATIT's February 7 letter says that cyber advisors was hired to identify the, quote, causes of the compromise, unquote. This acknowledges that MAT's or MATIT's systems were definitely compromised. Back to Alliant's August 23 email. This email twice recommends hiring a company like cyber advisors, and it gives two reasons for doing so. The first reason is because someone had access to the emails Heather had received from Alliant. They then apparently made a copy of a legitimate email and pasted in their own message in the middle. We're unsure exactly what the writer means here by insiders, but discussions about insider threats include the possibility of a careless employee infecting the system with malware, which is malicious software. The second reason given for hiring a company like cyber advisors is that one of the bogus August 3 emails had an attachment. Clicking on attachments sent by hackers can install malware on your computer. Thus, MAT's systems needed to be checked for malware. It's definitely MAT's systems that Alliant was recommending be checked, not MATIT's. It was a MAT email account that was accessed. MATIT doesn't have its own email accounts. Here's page 1 of Cyber Advisor's 6-page report. The Cyber Advisor's report only speaks of MATIT's systems, not MAT's systems, and it explicitly says that no malware scans were performed. No MAT network was accessed by cyber advisors, and no computer was accessed directly. Instead, a special copy of the device's hard drives was made, and that copy was analyzed. How many devices? How many computers were analyzed? 2 computers were analyzed, a Dell XPS, which would be either a desktop or a laptop, and a Microsoft Surface Pro, which would be a laptop. These are the only devices that were indirectly analyzed out of MAT's entire network. The report mentions these 2 devices multiple times. This reference says that CyberAdvisors was hired to analyze only those 2 devices. Here's another reference. And another. On June 27, 2023, we submitted a data request to MATIT for documents that would identify these 2 devices and who they were assigned to. We have received no response at all as of yet. Whose devices would need checking to see how someone gained access to Heather's MAT email account? It would seem obvious that every device from which Heather had access to her email should have been checked. Hypothetically, that might include a computer at the office, a laptop at home, and her smartphone. The Wright County Sheriff's report gives Heather's address on August 24 as being Kingwood, Texas, which is near Houston. It would make sense that Heather would still be listed as living in the Houston area since she was still working for Houston Methodist until November 2022. But she was definitely at the MAT office on August 24 when the sheriff's deputy came by. We point this out merely to show the importance of CyberAdvisors checking both Heather's computer at the MAT office and the devices she used at home and her Houston office if she had one, and whatever devices she used when away from the office and home. But it's not just Heather's devices that needed checking. We earlier reported that Jeff Krueger had intercepted emails we sent to the MAT directors in December 2022. Since then, we have identified additional individuals whose emails appear to have been intercepted or accessed by Jeff. If Jeff had access to all MAT emails, including Heather's, a hacker hypothetically could have used Jeff's device to access Heather's email. Thus, all of Jeff's devices that potentially had such email access should have been analyzed for compromise too. Even if we go no further, that sure looks like more than 2 devices that needed checking. If MAT stored all the email on a central server, then that server needed checking as well. If the email was instead stored in the cloud, I would think the cloud system would need to be analyzed just like a server in the office or in a data center would. Since we're talking about a theft of $834,197, why stop there? If looking at Heather's and Jeff's devices and the central server didn't turn up anything, why not look at everyone's devices that could connect to MAT's network? There are computer worms that can travel from one device to another within a network. If you figure out which computer got infected and remove it, that does nothing to guarantee that your network is safe, because that one computer could have already passed on the infection to other computers on the network. The CyberAdvisors report says what we've already noted, that someone was able to access Heather's emails. But how? The next paragraph says that CyberAdvisors couldn't figure out how that was done, which isn't surprising, since it only had access to the images of 2 computers. We were led to believe that CyberAdvisors was hired to determine what caused the compromise. In reality, Alliant recommended that MAT systems be checked for malware. CyberAdvisors was never hired to do that. CyberAdvisors was only hired to analyze 2 devices. Analyzing only 2 wasn't enough to determine how MAT systems were compromised and whether they remained compromised. Why didn't MATIT hire CyberAdvisors to do a better job, given the amount of money at stake? At this point, we just don't know. But on July 5, we did ask this question of MATIT, requesting an answer by noon on July 11. Was a device belonging to Jeff compromised, allowing the perpetrator to access the emails between Alliant and Heather? This seems to be a fair question. If the answer proves to be no, then it will help narrow the hypothetical possibilities as to why only 2 devices were analyzed. We have now covered the major issues. There are some minor ones that we will now quickly mention. The first one doesn't sound minor, though. Was privacy information breached? I can't see how the CyberAdvisors report demonstrates that no privacy information was. Page 6 of the Cyber Advisors report says that cloud logs weren't accessed because that wasn't applicable. Page 2 says that because of the lack of a license, Cyber Advisors couldn't identify what mailboxes were searched or what emails were read. And yet page 1 of the report says that no privacy breach occurred and no sensitive, personally identifiable information was accessed. But how would Cyber Advisors even be able to determine that if they only analyzed 2 devices, if there were no logs to access, and if they couldn't even tell which mailboxes got searched and which emails got read? We have been informed that this determination only pertains to the extent of what Cyber Advisors was able to analyze. It would seem that the report should read that Cyber Advisors was unable to determine that a privacy breach did occur, rather than that they determined that no privacy breach occurred. In other words, Cyber Advisors apparently found no evidence of a privacy breach, but they weren't allowed to look in all the places where such evidence might have been able to be found. The next lesser issue is, how many wire transfers were there? There were 2 successful wire transfers that followed more than one failed wire transfer. MATIT's February 7 letter speaks of a single wire transfer and a single payment. But this part of the Cyber Advisors report speaks of 2 wire transfers, a failed one and a successful one. And yet page 4 of Cyber Advisors report contains an August 5 email that shows that there were 2 successful wire transfers combined, which totaled $834,197. The Wright County Sheriff's report corroborates this detail, giving the 2 wire transfers and showing that they totaled $834,197. But before Heather sent those 2 successful wire transfers, she had sent wires, plural, that had failed, according to this August 3 email she sent. The next lesser issue, how many policies were the wire transfers for? They appear to be for 2, which is why there were 2 wire transfers. Those 2 policies were the liability policy and the property policy. MATIT's February 7 letter speaks only about a property and casualty reinsurance premium. The word premium is singular. Thus, according to this letter, the liability insurance premium wasn't even involved. But the first email from the threat actor in the Cyber Advisors report has a subject line that makes clear he was writing about the liability premium. Alliance August 23 email also indicates that both premiums were at issue since both invoices were attached for reference. The APIP invoice would be for the property premium, and the other invoice is identified as being for the liability premium. The next lesser issue. Did MATIT routinely use wire transfers to pay its reinsurance premiums? MATIT's February 7 letter asserts that MATIT did, but one source told us that at least for the immediate past, the reinsurance premiums were paid by check, not wire transfer. Since we do not presently have documentation to definitively prove this one, we'll leave it as still an open question for now. The next lesser issue. Will Matt turn in an insurance claim for the loss that Matt caused MATIT to incur? Or is Matt expecting the Townships to cover the loss? That's one thing that MATIT's February 7 letter says nothing about. It says nothing about an insurance claim being turned in to Matt's insurer for the theft. Why not? In a normal situation, if you hire a contractor and that contractor causes you a loss of nearly $1 million, it's the contractor that must cover the loss, not you. But thus far, we've heard nothing about an insurance claim or MATIT filing suit against its contractor, Matt, over this huge loss. The last lesser issue. Why are the dates in Cyber Advisors' report unintelligible? If it weren't for this one, maybe we wouldn't have pondered over the report for so long and kept asking questions. Can you make any sense out of these 2 sentences? MATIT received an email on August 9 saying to pay their reinsurance premium by July 31st. Soon after August 9, MATIT received a similar email saying to pay by July 2nd. The impossibility of these sentences makes me wonder if Cyber Advisors didn't really write them. Here's a possible reconstruction. Alliance sent MATIT an email on June 29 requesting payment for the liability premium by July 31st, and a second email on July 13 requesting payment for the property premium by July 20. Soon after July 13, on July 18, MATIT received a bogus email requesting payment by some yet unknown date. MATIT emailed Alliant on August 3rd that the wired money would arrive on August 9. Our apologies for not being able to reconstruct one of those dates. More on that later. Here's an Alliant email on page 4 of the Cyber Advisor's report sent on July 13 requesting payment for the property premium by July 20. Note how the email headers to the right are fairly easy to read. Here's the first bogus email received. Note how difficult the email headers to the right are to read. One of the most important parts of this email as far as forensics go is almost impossible to read. However, by comparing the three instances of the dates in those headers, we can make out that it was sent on a Monday in July, and most likely the 18th. July 18 in 2022 was indeed a Monday. We'll skip Alliant's June 29 email and MATIT's August 3rd email that are possible reconstruction referenced, and skip to part of the Data Practices Act. And here's where I will shift from news to news and commentary. According to the Data Practices Act, MATIT must have procedures in place to ensure that data requests are responded to in an appropriate and prompt manner. Why couldn't my possible reconstruction specify a date for when the threat actor requested payment by? Because MATIT hasn't complied with the law. If I had gotten a response to my data request for the relevant invoices, I would know what the relevant due dates were. On December 2nd, I requested documents showing the amount stolen from MATIT. On January 20, MATIT responded that no such documents exist. How's that for prompt? It took 7 weeks to get that response. Personally, I didn't believe that no such documents existed, and so I then requested on January 27 the invoices that pertained in any way to the theft. It's been nearly 6 months since then, and I still have no invoices from Alliant and the threat actor. All I've ever received was a $2,000 invoice from Cyber Advisors for the 8 hours they put into their investigation and report. But my January 27 request was clear. I was asking for invoices that would reveal the amount of the theft. On September 22, we first started making data requests to MATIT for data pertaining to the August 30 closed MATIT board meeting. On October 4th, we received our third response, the first response to come from an external attorney. That October 4 letter revealed for the first time that a crime had occurred. If I hadn't have started asking questions and making these data requests, would MATIT have ever admitted that a crime occurred? Would MATIT's February 7 letter have ever been sent out? But regardless of what the answers to those questions are, note how this letter contains a description that may have been written by someone other than the letter's author, someone other than the attorney. Note what it says about why I couldn't receive the requested data. MATIT was investigating the security of its computer and communication systems. But hiring Cyber Advisors to analyze only 2 devices didn't do that. And Cyber Advisors' invoice documents that it had already set up the project 5 days before this letter was written. This claim, therefore, appears to have been false. This whole saga has given me a new respect for attorneys. If their clients aren't forthright with them, if they withhold critical information from them, what is the attorney supposed to do? At any rate, I do not believe I was being told the truth in this block-quoted paragraph. At the time I received this letter, I could not see how the MATIT trustees were briefed on the technicalities of whatever vulnerabilities were suspected, making the recording I had requested off-limits. What had gotten me asking questions to begin with were these minutes of the closed August 30 MATIT board meeting. The stated reason for closing the meeting, Minnesota Statute 13D.05, Subdivision 3D, just didn't seem to make any sense. That statute required that a recording be made and that it be kept for 4 years. And so on September 22nd, I began asking for the recording of the August 30 meeting if that meeting had violated the open meeting law by being closed when it shouldn't have been. Later, I asked for the portions of the recording that dealt with topics that the meeting couldn't be closed for. I had to wait until November 29 to finally be told that no recording of the meeting existed, even though the open meeting law required that it be recorded and that the recording be kept for 4 years. Is it really true that no recording exists? Who knows at this point? Lastly, we started our investigative report with a reference to Jeff Krueger's article in The Last Insider, which article also mentions the situation with the Norman County unit. For the background of this report, we've used a scene from the January 5, 2023 Zoom hearing that the MAT board held before voting to expel 5 Norman County townships. Is there any connection between how the theft was handled and the Norman County situation? It might be coincidental, but the Alliant email was sent on August 23, the very day I gave my presentation on the county unit question at the District 12 meeting in Bagley. On August 24, the sheriff's deputy stopped by the MAT office. On August 25, I sent my email to the MAT board, which sort of opened the proverbial Pandora's box. The MAT board was told about the theft in a closed August 30 meeting. The day before that, Jeff asked NCAT to call a meeting. On September 14, the MAT board voted to hire cyber advisors. That was the same day that the NCAT resolution was sent to the MAT board. Cyber advisor's engineer did his work on October 13 and 14. On the morning of October 13, I stopped by the MAT office to inspect the Form 990s. Just hours after I did, the MAT board voted to kick out 5 Norman County townships. I think how these dates line up is to some extent an unfortunate coincidence, and yet the added stress of the theft and how it all was being handled may have had something to do with how some chose to deal with a person who was asking way too many questions. And perhaps, if all of this is probed a bit more, one might be able to answer an overarching question in the minds of many: why all the craziness of the last few years? We don't have the answer for sure to that one, at least not yet. If you want to be kept informed about future reports, hit the subscribe button, and comments are welcome. Thank you for listening.